distinction when it comes to things like that. So, in other words, you're that kind of man that can't appreciate the uniqueness properly. What a shame. Why can't you guys never agree onto something, even for a moment? And while we're at it, I know that I said it's my treat, but don't you think you're going to hide my face? It was amazing. Thanks. Why didn't you already participate in official competitions? Personal circumstances. What's your relationship with Yuami? Gaming friends. How can I be like you? Actual fact, in order to suit their setting better. Sometimes it even reaches the level where the nature of the creature in question is purely cosmetic, making you ask yourself the ever important question: what was the point, then? On the other hand, staying as close to the original as possible is no good either, as it sometimes can give birth to quite the contradictions. Take Ifrit, the fire spirit for example. In some setting it is presented in form of a flaming lizard, because in Europe salamanders were pretty much equal to Ifrit, but we are not in Europe here, so thank you very much for that. Oh well, at least that is how the story goes in other games. Now, how does that compare to the spirits presented in Shanfro? Well, let's imagine a natural catastrophe or cataclysm. Now give it free will and the ability to go basically whenever it pleases. It is that kind of existence, but rather than spreading death and destruction indiscriminately, it also possesses a unique ego and a set of parameters that is its very own. That is the definition of a spirit on the world of Shangri-La Frontier. It is because of that that the comparison to the natural disaster or a cataclysm is surprisingly accurate, because spirits are not living beings per se. It is an accumulation of condensed magical power. But that also means that once all that magic is used up, the spirit also ceases to exist. Just like tornado, that disperses into normal winds the moment all of its raging fury disperses. In other words, spirits are creatures that live with the constant reminder in form of a ticking clock. What's more, the ego of a spirit is not a fully grown one, like that of adult humans or animals. If you had to compare it to anything, it would be an ego of a small child, capable of acting on its own, but barely capable of distinguishing itself from the rest of the surrounding world. That is why most of the spirits will usually disappear without a trace, not even trying to fight their fate. Apparently when they use up all of their power, they disappear simply because they are unable to decide whatever they should do after that fact. Nonetheless, it was not entirely wrong to think that the more famous and grand the name of the spirit in Shanfro, the greater its power and the scale of the catastrophe they could cause. And it goes without saying, but since they possess at least some semblance of ego and personality, spirits can sometimes be a real pain in the ass to deal with, but sometimes they can be even more insignificant than insects such as cicadas or fireflies, not to mention their abilities to absorb magic from their surroundings, and that the way they could wield them were more potent and dangerous than that of any human. But in the end, spirits are just that for the players. Spirits, unless they are an enemy mob or boss characters, or are involved with NPCs or in certain questlines, players could go on about their daily business without really caring about them all that much to begin with. But if they appear during a unique scenario like this one, that's a whole different story. So, what's the deal with this Ijazistansu here? Its existence, thank you very little. A very powerful spirit, indeed, but that's only a given. Did you know that all spirits that fail to become strong will fade into oblivion as a result? Which means, it means what I just explained. Perhaps Steph. This is bad. I knew I should have read the strategy guides in forums in greater detail before coming here. Even the dwarves are aware of such basic knowledge, or should I call it common sense? And if you do not possess any power on your own, then there is no need for anyone else to provide you food or shelter. And what happened to any sort of aid or help from those at power? Also, what does existence even mean? Usually it's the term given to beings that are alive. Sanraku, are you doing that on purpose, or are you just a little bit slow on the uptake? Well, it doesn't really matter. Let's just continue. For a moment out there Alva looked as though he just witnessed the most unsightly of insects, but he did not try to argue. It was simply because having me around was beneficial to him, as we all could see from our previous fights together. That was more than enough to tolerate all of my deficits of common sense and knowledge. But Alva proved to be a capable fighter before, especially during the Reaper Orca battle. She happened to be that kind of spirit as well. She had an ego of her own, but she was unable to harness magic for herself from her surroundings, as a result of which she was on the brink of disappearing completely. Their story was really noisy and all over the place, but from what I could understand it is that this sword contained a spirit that was at one point in time about to disappear because of its own inability to adapt and survive. But after that, the spirit decided to show me her human form. Everything about her was bluish in color. Her eyes, her skin, her hair. She was even wearing a robe that looked just like the surface of the water, bluish in color, but not transparent or see-through. Normally it would be a really stimulating clothes, but the outline of her body clad in that water dress seemed to blur at some point, so you were unable to pick up any details. No, it was not that. It was more like her whole appearance was made out of water, rather than being of flesh and blood. That would certainly explain why she would liquefy from time to time. Ah, that is where I come in. I couldn't leave her like that to her own fate, so I managed to bring her to a dwarven blacksmith who enchanted her into my own weapon. Of course, it was done with her consent and with her best interest in mind. Or at least it was something like that. Chapter 187, Give Me a Private Room in a Net Cafe Part 2. You there? Were you not looking for us for a long time? Is there any reason why I would want to do such a thing? I guess if this was a different kind of game, you could have applied the trope of boy meets girl in here, but this game was not of that particular kind. So, to make a long story short, the sword contains a spirit, and the user feeds the magic energy to the sword. No, I guess it would be more accurate to say that the sword itself collects magic energy to some extent. Or maybe it is because of dwelling inside of the sword that spirit learned to absorb magic properly. Foo fun, it seems that I have managed to hit the nail right to the head. The weapon with the spirit sealed inside of it is like a royal banquet for any player out there. It is such good of a treat, completely different from your typical tea and rice. And now I was somehow getting hungry. Once I log out for the day, let's make some akazuke. There should be the ingredients laying around for that. But it was not such an easy task. You see, even if the spirit is about to disappear, you cannot forge the contract without actual consent from the spirit itself. So you cannot really force it to be contained within a weapon. Yeah, that really sounds amazing. I wonder if you were to jam-pack a whole lot of spirits into a weapon, would it turn into a weapon of mass destruction? What did you just say? And guess what? I have recently cleared a game that had a motif just like that, and its name was Fairy Chronicles Online. Ugh, the flashbacks. My poor head. I was joking. It was a joke, man. Besides, are not the dwarves the ones who would usually go and do such despicable things? Well, duh. Obviously, they may be an assholes sometimes, but they are good guys most of the time. But they can still be assholes. I can imagine, especially if they are drunk or have an attitude like normal dwarves in your standard fantasy setting. Plus, being minors and living mostly underground can definitely add to that factor as well. When I came here initially, I was overrun by enemies and I let her go by accident. I'm so glad I was able to find you again. For a moment out there I was really scared. I thought this creature was really going to eat me. Oh, so that thing really was trying to devour you. Tentacles, female spirit, being attacked and almost devoured. Oh boy. I'm glad that Shanfro is not rated R18. I really am. You should be as well, Alva. And we were actually pretty lucky there. If that chimera managed to absorb the sword, it would have most probably gain a spirit attribute for itself. I mean, I could still technically cut it with my Dullahan sword, that is if genuine spirits were susceptible to that. You have my gratitude, bird person. Is there anything I can do to ever repay you? If you are feeling grateful to me, then please keep doing your best as Alva's weapon. Otherwise a certain octopus might rip him a new one. It is without a doubt that Cutenid, a unique monster who is most probably on the level of a little god, will have no problem demolishing normal humans. However, Taking into account that Alva is what he is, plus that he has sharp fangs and his weapon besides him right now, he should at least be a force to be reckoned with. Or at the very least that is something I would like to believe. Counting all of our manpower, this party was now 8 persons big, NPC included. Of course, stupid shithead is not counted here, but having 8 people on board to fight a unique monster surely beats up doing so with party of 3, all with lowered levels to boot. Of course, I will give it my all. Nereus is going to protect both Alva and Bird Person. And that creature that looks like black and white sea urchin. I'm a Vocal Bunny, you'd better remember that. Cut her some slack, Emule. She probably has no idea what a Vocal Bunny is. Mostly because there are no sea-dwelling Vocal Bunnies, not that I care all that much. Now, calm down little sea urchin. Ouch, that hurts. Don't poke my head so relentlessly, that hurts. Pew. Normally I'd laugh it off and blame it on the lack of knowledge about land creatures, but it was actually kind of funny. Thimule tended to have such a short fuse in some cases. Fugnia ... Oh, what is that? Don't tell me you're going to lose to Nereus, a freaking spirit-possessed sword? That would just be shameful. My dear Emule, you're my adorable mascot, so act like it and show us what you've got once in a while. Oh well, what the hell. Might as well do that now than wait for later. Alva, we are going to hunt us some boss. Isn't that way too sudden? I cannot do any more leveling at the current moment. I also cannot go any try to farm for items, hoping that something good is going to drop. So going to fight against the bosses was the only real thing that was left for me to do here. But that thing I saw can probably absorb magic damage. But hopefully even the spirit-possessed sword can dish out some physical damage. So it should not be that much of a problem. Well, it's not that I am not seriously thinking about tackling any of the bosses here right now, at least not when the other players are not around. At the very least some recon would be nice. You see, there are 4 bosses to be fought here, so you know what that means, right? You go back and guard the base, Emule. Pewee. After all, in the coming battle magic users' only use would be that of a meat shield, and we absolutely cannot have that, right? Chapter 188, Days of Connecting and Being Connected Part 1. Turned out that Ikazuk was not enough for me, so I have decided to make some other simple dish to go along with that. I added oil on the frying pan, heated it up and then added leftover rice and broth to it. Then I scavenged the contents of their refrigerator for things I could throw into the mix. And once I have found them I threw them in on the pan with all the rest. I finished the dish with a pinch of both salt and pepper. I shall name this dish, what the hell? This is your typical fried rice in there, ain't it? Or you could even call it a half-assed chicken rice, but without ketchup and all that other fancy stuff. Okay, starting from today, thou shalt be called chicken rice. Now, maybe I should add some egg into you for some added flavor. Alright. For now I have tried to defeat one of the bosses in the city's towers, and as for the result of that, I quickly finish my meal and then log in on the SNS chat group to report that the magic absorbing boss has been successfully defeated. The name of the magic absorbing boss was Cleon, and while Cleon was a truly formidable enemy because of his magic absorbing ability, it had one fatal flaw that proved to be the end of it. It was laughingly weak against physical attacks. Also, for some reason all of its attacks were magic-based, and they were all in shape of cones or other things that made them quite easy to dodge if you knew what was coming. But on the other hand, something about the Cleon setting seemed to be really fishy to me. And I do not mean the smell here. This boss seemed way too fresh for me. Basically, all of the monsters in here are rotten or decomposed to some degree. No matter if it's the fish zombie, mermaids or the gigantic fish predators, or even if they were not rotten, there was this fleshy odor coming from them. However, I could feel none of the above mentioned things from Cleon. It is really difficult to put into words properly, that sense of inconsistency. Yeah. It's like there was some kind of mistake in the writing, perhaps? Let's illustrate it as follows. The boss uses a magic attack that looks like a row of throwing knives. So you'd expect the projectiles to act like knives in terms of physics, right? Well, wrong. The attack may look like knives, but in reality it works just like a freaking shotgun shells, with their spread and damage and all that. So, there is a real sense of being disconnected from what you see versus what you actually get. Come to think of it now, a whole lot more enemies in here had that sense of inconsistency to them. For examples, the mermaids may look like mermaids, but you get the feeling that it was actually something else that was just forced to act like a mermaid. So yeah, the bottom of the boat which contained boiling water that started to overflow, closed gates that you can only pass by but in one direction, a friendly NPCs that wants to ally with you but because of a bug you can see that they are really an enemy, so the whole plot twist of the quest goes out the window big time. What on earth are you even talking about? I am trying to verbalize the concept laying behind the mechanics governing this whole underwater city, and when I put my thoughts into words my brain cells tend to work with way more efficiency. Oh, Sanraku-san, you sometimes act as if you were sick? I'm really worried about you, you know? An illness? How rude. It's not an illness. It's called brainstorming. Have you ever heard about that before? You should really try it sometimes. However, there is one huge problem here. With my current build I will be unable to defeat the boss that nullifies physical attacks. If I wanted to try my luck at bringing that thing down, I would need the help of magic users such as Mold or Akatsu again. And then there is the problem of two other bosses that would remain. Magic does damage, but physical attacks get nullified, but sometimes it can be the other way around, or it might even work interchangeably. However, I have no way of knowing what is it exactly, but I feel as though Cleon is the key to the mystery in here. It might be safe to assume that the remaining two bosses can be like Cleon here, nullifying magic damage, or the complete opposite, which means nullifying physical damage. That line of thinking is not wrong, as the two bosses that remain are sure to have some sort of restrictions that are there to ramp up the difficulty of their respective battles. But, one must remember that in here, in this underwater city, everything is revered by nature. Oil is water, water is oil, North Pole would be the South Pole and vice versa. That's right. It is always coming in pairs. When it comes to inversion, it is a process that cannot actually be done unless the thing it works on does not have the second side. You need to have both front and back, or else upon inversion nothing would happen. So, following that logic, it appears as though our initial thought of this place and its rulers was fundamentally wrong from the very beginning. We thought that what we are dealing here are one unique monster and four boss monster that guards the towers, while in reality two bodies that are actually being split into two, or so it would seem. Kitanid is a given here, since it is the main source of this place's gimmick to begin with, so that it would leave the remaining two monsters, right? What is their gimmick? What makes for their strengths? And what makes their weaknesses? Could it be critical hits, or maybe a limited window of opportunity to dish out damage? Nah, that cannot be it. Rust said that no matter the type of bow and arrows, neither physical nor magic ones did any damage, but at the same time, the hits seemed to have connect. According to Mold, it seemed as though the player's attacks seemed to be effective every time they were at a disadvantage and vice versa. And according to Akatsu Akane, his kunais seemed to have sometimes hit and sometimes they would get nullified. While I was processing all those information, a mermaid approached us and started singing. I reflexively hit it with a high kick that managed to dislocate its jaw. But poor mule was still hit with the song and fell from his rightful place on my shoulders. At that time my thinking processes accelerate even further. Amongst all of the testimonies I managed to gather, the one from Mold seems to be the most important one, while the ones from Rust and Akatsu Akane are more or less the same. Mold 1 is distinct and unique, being able to damage the boss only when you have the advantage and being able to damage the boss only when you are at a disadvantage. Chapter 188, Days of Connecting and Being Connected Part 2. At first glance it sounds really silly, being able to hit something and deal damage only when you are at an advantage or disadvantage. To begin with, those terms sound really vague. I easily dodged the laughable attempt of the mermaid at attacking me. She was trying to give me a hug with furious expression. but I dodged her to the side and slashed her across the nape with my Dalahan sword. Pidgey? I thought I have heard a death scream of some sort, but right about now my brain was working on full throttle, so I pretty much stopped paying attention to such insignificant details. Akatsu Akane's kunai knife was always giving more or less the same results when facing both bosses. In case of Rust, the effectiveness of her arrows was depending on the fact is she was currently at the advantage or disadvantage. Now, is there some kind of fundamental difference when it comes to both kunai knives and bows? The unquestionable advantage of the bow is that you can snipe various targets from great distances, without the risk of getting involved with the enemies yourself. What are the disadvantages of the bow, then? It's quite simple, just eliminate the distance factor and the bow user is as good as screwed. What are the unique characteristics of Akatsu Akane's kunai knives? Kunai knife is a disposable item that can be used in two ways. It can be thrown from the distance at the target, or it can be used as a bladed weapon, although it is far weaker than your usual knives and daggers. Distance? My thoughts passed through the dark tunnel, only to be illuminated by the light of the answer that was waiting at the end of said tunnel. Even though my theory is not proven by anything, I am fairly sure that I have managed to hit a jackpot. The moment when the bowman loses advantage and starts to be at the disadvantage. The moment attacks switch category from long distance to close distance. And in kunai knife's case, it can be attributed to the fact that it can be switched in between throw weapon and close-ranged weapon. I've got it. I've got the answer. It's not the answer to some stupid questions we should be looking forward to right now. It should be the freaking safe zone. Oh yeah, right. I totally forgot about it. I was so passionate about thinking this matter through that I have forgotten that I was actually right in the middle of a wart zone. Oh well. Guess it's high time to go back to reality. Alva above. Watch out. Say something like that sooner. Don't ask for the impossible. Do you want your beloved sword to become a great wiener again? Or do you want it to become the best weapon ever made? This level of adversity is nothing. Thinking routine like that was easy to handle, but it was also the exact reason why it was making me worried. I mean, if I can do it, it means that people like Pensilgton can do it as well, and letting people like her do things like that is never a good thing. Sanraku, important strategy meeting. Sanraku, you see, it might be a little bit long to fully copy and paste in here, but I think I figured something out about the remaining bosses we must face. The deal is, they can probably possess invulnerability depending on the distance the player maintains from them. So that it would be long distance nullification and close distance nullification. Sanraku, so normally I would propose to use the close quarters tactics for one boss and long range for another, but this time something tells me it won't be that easy to pull off. Mold. Rust is currently incapacitated, so I shall relay everything to her. Sanraku, what the hell happened? Mold. There was an announcement at the GGC that they are currently working on the sequel to Niflheim's Hollow. Didn't you know? Sanraku, seriously? Well, now that the sequel has been announced, I guess the first game will start to get more and more depopulated. Huh? Akatsu Akane, it's break time. Sanraku. Anyways, what I want to plan in advance is the time at which we should take down the bosses. Sanraku. Also, it should go without saying, but defeating the smaller bosses is our path to cuteness. Also, let's hope that it will cast some sort of demerit on the guy. Sanraku. Oh, thank you for all of your hard work. Sanraku. We must also be ready for the eventuality that once we beat all of the 4 smaller bosses, we will get instantly locked into a battle with Kittanid instead of being able to prepare ourselves. Best to be ready for that. Akatsu Akane, yes. Just a little bit more and I'll be able to give it my all. Mold. So you want to be done with all the small bosses by the 6th day? Sanraku, that is what I want to do. I'm done with my matters on my end, so I can go all the way until the end now. It's just a matter of recruiting more members. Mold. By tomorrow I should be able to bring Rust back to sanity, so we should be able to participate no problem. Akatsu Akane, if it's on the 6th day, then it is okay for me. Akatsu Akane, I'm sorry for having called you here so suddenly. Rust, world level excellent. Until next year I cannot allow myself to die. Mold. At this rate, If this keeps on, Sanraku, it's not that I cannot understand how you feel. Sanraku, hopefully we will be able to join us before the 7th day mark. Mold, I don't ever see her around here. Does she even logged in once since we arrived in here? Sanraku, she is probably busy with stuff in real life, but hopefully she will be able to join us on the fun before this quest is over. Sanraku, fortunately enough we have an oversized landmark that should be just about right. The landmark named Cutenid. Sanraku, as for our schedules. Now, then, right, time to earn some dough for myself. Since boss fights are to be fought as a group, I must wait for the day during which other will be available. Until then, I can stroll around the underwater city at my leisure, earning money and items without reservation since boss actions or unique scenario X's actions are not shackling me down. Good thing that in case I ever run out of space to hold my items in, the inventory can act as unlimited storage space. Chapter 189, running from 4 to 5 Part 1. For today I have planned an exciting seafood tour. When it comes to the enemies you encounter during the day, they may not look fresh in the least, but surprisingly enough they drop fresh ingredients when you kill them. So it's not really a zombie hunt right about now, but rather a seafood hunt. Oh, won't you look at that? It's the rare enemy, the Seafood Emperor. Hahaha, but this time around I see that you have managed to absorb nothing more but fish. I have heard that female anglerfish tend to devour their partners, but does that mean the female anglerfish can devour males of other races? It was really scary to think about it. I know that chimeras are technically mutants, but is it really okay for them to inherit such characteristics? And is that really a rare enemy? I get the feeling that its encounter rate is way bigger than other rare enemies out there, but compared to other games this is really amazing. Take United Rounds for example. Some rare enemies in that game were so rare that you would have a better luck at finding such an Oko is your local forest rather than encountering rare enemies. And the ratio? One rare enemy every few hundred normal encounters, give or take. But when you actually manage to encounter one, it turns out that it was so difficult to defeat that it actually felt like you were fighting an indestructible object. However, even those things were killable with just the right strategy, and actually killing one was so satisfying that you would not believe. Anyways, I had no time to spare right now, not even the small amount to check the items' descriptions. I was just slashing, and slashing, and slashing away at the fish that came under my blade. Sometimes it was even scaring me just how ruthless in terms of item farming efficiency I could be. You're in the way, Twintails, get lost. The upper half of it may look human, but you still managed to kick it away so effortlessly and without giving it much thought. You are truly a ruthless person, Sanraku-san. In my eyes they all look like oversized sandbags right about now. Eat this sucker. More often than not people tend to complain that once they achieve certain goals in any given MMO out there is not that much things for them to do or goals to accomplish. But right now, I had a goal that I was going to accomplish, to line up my pockets with as much cash and items as I possibly could. Phew ha ha, phew ha ha ha, phew ha 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 ha. Long straight black hair, blonde twin tails, short silver bob haircut. They are all effectively cash and items and materials in my eyes right about now. Please don't get me wrong, but sometimes, I cannot help it but wonder if you are not, how to put this lightly, a little bit touched to the head. It's alright. They may not taste all that good, but fighting them sure is a memorable experience. Ha ha ha. Is it not just straight up laughable when the NPC tries to preach something to the player that the player already knows? You would think that I would get enough. But no. The seafood tour around the underwater city never ends. During the daytime, I was hacking and slashing and slicing at the rotten zombie fish people, but not at night. Night is a different matter altogether. This time I am rampaging against fresh fish, the opponents that are not the least bit rotten anywhere, and that fact alone is causing me to want to go on an even bigger rampage some more. Just take a look at this thing, the way it looks, almost like the Seafood Emperor. You think it's its mother or something? It's an enslaving carrier angler. Do you really wish to challenge that thing? Mumbling such things in an embarrassed voice, with a mule still sitting on top of my head, I look up to see the monster towering over us in the air above. Arctus Regilex was a train of a monster. The Reaper Orca was like a combination. It was a monster with defenses of a tank and firepower of a battle-experienced battleship. So now, to what exactly we could compare this here enslaving carrier angler? Ha ha ha. If you were able to see it with your own eyes you would get it right away. Hey there, Seafood Emperor's mum. Just so you know, your child was freaking delicious. Oh shit, this guy might really have a screw or two loose in that head of his. Say, a mule, this thing is crazy big, but that should also mean that it is going to drop a whole lot of items and materials. Wouldn't you say? You really have something seriously wrong going on with your head. There's no doubt about it. There was one huge monster out there and a swarm of smaller monsters surrounding it on all sides. They weren't all that big, but their shape was long and thin, with wide and long fins that made them resemble small airplanes, the likes of which aircraft carriers would carry on their decks. Oh, and they had teeth. Lots and lots of sharp teeth. Oh yeah, that's right. That's it. If you weren't calling this thing an aircraft carrier, then how else would you call it? I'm genuinely curious. Hey Alva, in your honest opinion, how strong do you think that thing is? So strong that the only thing that can easily defeat it in open combat is Deep Sea Emperor, a creature living inside of the underwater forest. I see. Now that he said it, I would most definitely like to see that underwater forest with my own eyes someday. But oh well, if that means we would have a rather hard or downright impossible time with it. This means I want to try. Besides, it's not that we have anything better to do at the current moment. And just think about the drop items. Take a look at that. The things that are coming from over there. If this huge monster is an aircraft carrier, does that mean the smaller ones are torpedoes or maybe destroyers, suicide boats? How about giving it a shot? On your marks, take aim, and fire. Good. Good morning. I was wondering about that, but could it be that Sanriku is not that much of a morning person? He was pretty much acting the same way when we have met for the first time in 5th year. Nah. It's not that. It's just that the fucking aircraft carrier took way more time to sink than you would have initially expected. Are we talking about this game right here? Or maybe some other game that you are playing on the side? Of course it's a story from Shanfro. What else were you expecting? Unfortunately both Alva and Mule were overtaken by fatigue. So for now they are resting in the safe house, while I'm getting ready for the incoming boss battle. Chapter 189, Running from 4 to 5 Part 2. You could say that I could have taken some caffeine in order to give myself some boost, but since we have no way of knowing how it will go on the 7th day, I need to save some of it for the big day. So, how did returning to sanity went? You managed to succeed? Well, I did the best I could, but unfortunately, ahaha, you foo. I see. The results was all smiles. Rust was sitting in the corner of the room, looking and behaving unusually quiet for herself. There was also that big, idiot-like smile plastered to her face at all times. It was the kind of smile that would even put a baby's one to shame, and kids are known for smiling genuinely at everything and everyone, since they are not aware of the harsh reality of the real world. No, really now. It was much worse yesterday, please believe me. She was spouting some nonsense all the time about going on a muscle-strengthening journey to make absolutely sure that she would not die before the sequel to Nephilim Hollow comes out. Look, I can definitely understand the feeling, but I can't really say that I have ever experienced it for myself. So I cannot really relate to her all that much. I don't really look forward to any game releases. Mainly because I keep my enthusiasm in check until the reviews are finally in. And that she wanted to become strong? Good luck with that. You'll need a whole lot of mental fortitude not to go crazy from waiting until the game gets delivered to you after its premiere. You think she'll be of any use to us in such state? It's okay. She was practicing all this time in VR for a day like that to come around. Both here in Shanfro and some previous games that she played. So no need to worry about her. I guess that all smiles Rust gets a pass for now. but the one that I am really concerned about is in fact Mold. When I asked him that, he only replied with a somewhat ambiguous smile. Well, in the long run it does not matter all that much. We are all players here, and since dying is of no real consequence, we can die during the boss fights without reservations. The place we shall be heading towards will be the Lulalus's South Tower, the one housing the boss that nullifies all ranged attacks. However, it's not like I was sure about that property of the boss. After all, it was Rust who happened to witness it with her own eyes. We could technically sacrifice one run just to see if it was indeed like that. But first and foremost goal was still getting rid of the boss. That goal remains unchanged. We're dealing with a barnacle and fishman couple here, and since we do not have a valid strategy fleshed out, it's going to be hard determining the damage, as well as the aggro. This is going to be one heck of a fight here. It's not that we cannot create an effective tank for the upcoming boss fights. It's about the resource consumption. So many items are needed for tanking effectively that you cannot really allow yourself to waste them on mid-tier bosses. We do have the possible last resort strategy of tanking. Someone would just run around and collect aggro, while a mule strapped to their head would keep shooting his magic. But as far as I am concerned, I would like to avoid having to turn to that strategy if we could help it. Besides, I would like to avoid having to get a mule involved in those fights as much as possible. It's simply way too dangerous. Alright, let's go beat ourselves some boss. Shall we? Come on now, Rust, I need you to come back to me. Get your shit together, we have work to do. The air is so delicious. Is it really going to be okay? Let us review what we know before the operation begins. The provisional name Snail has the potential ability to nullify all ranged attacks, no matter if they are normal attack or skill. In order to succeed in this battle, close ranged attacks are a necessity. That is why yours truly, Sanraku, is going to be in charge of the attacking as well as aggro management. Waiting at the distance is going to be Rust, who will also look out for an opportunity to get up close and personal with the snail, so that she can dish out some bow damage from close range. In this setting, Mold will work as a support for Rust, and since it would be quite troublesome if the boss started to focus him during the fight, Mold should stay away and avoid any combat actions himself, instead focusing solely on casting buffs and debuffs. We shall call this operation shell digging, even though we are not really sure if it's a snail or not. Mold, those are mere details, you don't have to worry about them too much, because that is not how we roll in here, okay? Anyways, Team Nephilim Hollow, ready to roll out. Each one of us grabs a hold of our weapons and we invade the inside of one of the remaining towers. I see, so it's actually a snail. Who would have thought? No, sure thing. Clean also seemed humanoid to me until it did not show its true colors. Apparently all of the bosses in here are pretending to be humanoid in shape. Hey, I once fought a giant robot dressed up as a Japanese samurai, but this here was quite the opposite. This monster looked pretty much like the Western Knight, although it was covered in barnacles and seashells. What stood out the most here was the fact that it had a giant snail in place where its head should normally be. I was also trying to imagine how this thing would look like without its shell, but no matter how I was trying to wrap my head around it. Ammonite. At least that's how I see it. Rust was betting on Nautilus, or maybe a snail. Ammonite was also there, but she did not wanted to say it for certain without a decisive proof. There are many strange things that could be pointed out here, but oh well, like interpersonal skills are going to be of any use against humanoid monsters. As for the weapon the boss was wielding, it looked pretty much like a rapier, but it was spiral in shape and covered in a whole bunch of shell-like thorns. Also, there was a cutlass in its other hand, clearly made for being used by humans. Upon seeing us, the boss assumed the battle position. Two-sword user. Huh? This is going to be fun, Ammonite Knight. There is certainly something romantic in dual-wielding two different types of weapons. However, no matter a normal opponent, player or a boss monster, I won't let anyone to outclass me when it comes to dual-wielding. Just like we have discussed before, I'll be in charge of taking this guy down. Are you alright? It might not be an evasion tank, but still its defensive power. I know that it was a point of concern, but still I replied with a smile on my face. Compared to the Wizardman, who was almost impossible to overcome, those things are nothing. Now then, let us start the hunt. Chapter 190 Part 1. Chapter 190, Collapsing Apex Part 1. Here's a piece of historical trivia. Rapiers were mostly used by European nobility for the purposes of dueling. Rapiers rarely were used on the actual battlefields, and even when used, they turned out to be downright useless. However, this place right here is the game world. This world tries to resemble the real world as much as possible, while also having things that set apart and distinguish the two from one another. So even if real-world rapiers were pretty much useless, this rapier here surely must be more than enough to send the players into respawn with ease. Since rapiers are mostly long and thin, it is a given that their main way of attacking is through piercing strikes and thrusts. That makes it even more troublesome, since with thrusts and piercing attacks one must take them on from the front, where they are only a single, small point. When attacks are forming a line such as strikes or slashes, that makes them easier to block since you have way more space of the weapon that you can block with relative ease. Of course, there is the matter of stats and attributes in games, but in general a vertical attack can be blocked by a horizontal move and a horizontal attack can be blocked by a vertical move. However, piercing attacks and thrusts have way smaller area of attack, which makes them increasingly more difficult to block. It's not impossible, but really hard to pull off. But surely you are more than well aware of that fact, huh? Snail Knight Kun! Exclamation mark. I feel like during the past month I have been fighting with nothing more but enemies that are familiar with the rules of Taz. Hell, recently I even happened to come across a human enemy that was more like a Taz monster. I know it may sound weird or disrespectful, but I could not be surprised if she turned out to have a battery pack hidden on her back. But thanks to that I have managed to understand the way in which enemies like that tend to work. Without that, it would be increasingly more difficult to pull this off. That is why right now I take 2 steps to the side and swing my sword in the direction that I have come from, striking the rapier thrust that was coming my way. Having parried that, I throw a thrusting attack of my own, aiming towards the elbow of the Snail Knight, which was now completely exposed due to it still being locked in the attack animation. It's a really good thing to have a game that think about small details like that, but in the end nothing can beat action games where you can recreate any kind of your favorite actions till the very last detail. I activate the skill Utsuromi Kagami, and then I quickly switch my weapons to a large Zweihander, and while dodging the slash from the cutlass I strike the Snail Knight right around the neck, or at least that area where it was difficult to differentiate if it was still the main body or if it was already the head. Not only the enemies can have the privilege of using piercing attacks, the players can utilize attacks and tactics like that as well. And you can be sure that if I can use something, I am going to utilize it to its full potential, and the enemies shall suffer because of that. Shoot, roger that. Status abnormality. There was still something off in Rut's voice even though she managed to recover from her no sanity mode, and then she rushed forward, jumped in the air and quickly retreated upon landing back on the ground.